You've made it to Chiro Hustle Live. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Chiro Sushi, Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic bootcamp, Moveville University, Pure Chiro Notes, Dr. Alok Trivedi, the Black Diamond Club, Element Mattresses, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, Vita Chiropractic, the Universal Traction System, MedZone, Vantage Point Marketing, and Imaging Services. Let's hustle. Hey everybody, Jim Chester coming to you live from Grand Junction. I am in the Grand Valley on the western slope of Colorado, which I like to say no one lives. And I have Linda Slak. She's coming from an area where a lot of people live, and that is Boston, Massachusetts. And maybe not Boston proper, but Boston, around the perimeter. And this episode is brought to us today by Imaging Services. If you guys want to get away from the chemical and go to the digital, reach out to Michael Tokash or Nathan Dominguez, and they will help you out with their products. So Linda, welcome to the Chiro Hustle live stream.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
This is so much fun. You're episode 41 of the Chiro Hustle podcast, and you gave a lot of information on chiropractic and kids. But before we jump into that topic, I know that people can't wait to hear what you have to say about the ICPA and about chiropractic in children. First, let's talk about practicing a family practice with family, which is John Mark Slak, your husband.
Yeah. So we, when our children were little, we decided that we both wanted to have our hands in both practice and raising our kids. So being husband and wife in practice, we had the ability to what some people call job share, right? And so we worked opposite days. One of us was always home with our children, and we were able to balance out life that way. It got a little tricky later on when the kids started playing sports because we both wanted to be there for their sporting events. But we got to share everything from practice to, sometimes I would say that practice was easier than being home with the kids. It was the vacation. I would tell my practice members that this is my fun, coming to the office. And, as I might have mentioned before, I had a daughter who, my daughter has had some challenges in school. She had a diagnosis of dyslexia. So she had some learning issues, and we had to monitor and manage that through a special education program in school. And that was like second full-time job. So it was nice to have the ability to coordinate and to balance our lives that way. In the very beginning, before children, we practiced all hours together. We would go to the front of the office, and whatever, we'd have files in the old days, no computers, and the files would be sitting on the counter, and we would just pick up a file and take the next person in. Everybody saw either one of us. There may have been like 3 or 4 patients who just wanted to see my husband or me. And for the most part, that's how we ran. And then when we started working opposite days and we developed our own practices, and in the last 10 years or so, we divided it even more. After the kids were grown, I started seeing only the kids and pregnant moms, and Jean-Marc started seeing all the adults within the practice.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's fun to see how the chiropractic family, especially like a couples operation, can go out there and take care of their communities and have fun and spend time together, and not like, I know that this might be weird, but a lot of times people they get into relationships and they build a life outside of their partner. And it's cool to hear how you guys have built a life as partners within work and within home and within career. So kudos to you guys.
It's always been that way, Jim. Even in school, when we were students, we shared clinic together. So one of us would take notes for the other, depending on who was one of us was the doctor, the other was the CA. And we are one of those couples that just, love being together. And it's great having 2 doctors in the office too, if you have a difficult case, to share ideas, to look at x-rays and get a second opinion right in-house. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it really makes me want to tell everybody out there watching, hey, relationship goals, if you guys have them, look at what Linda and John Mark have done and build your lives similar to where that they have done it so you can not have division of a relationship, but have more connection of relationship. And I think it's really cool. And it shows how much love you guys have for each other, being able to get to spend some time with you over the past weekend at the Berkshire's Philosophy Group 2018 in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. Let's talk a little bit. Let's touch like for 2 minutes on Garberfest and talk a little
Yes.
bit about what Marguerite and Scott have done.
Garberfest is my absolute favorite event every year. I love going there. And this year was special for me because there were a lot of new speakers, people I hadn't heard before. And boy, were they on fire. Just to give you some of my favorite things, Gilles Lamarche, who got up and spoke, and he talking about when you wake up in the morning, you put your 2 feet on the floor and you go, thank you. And just being grateful for every day that you're here to give, to serve, to be able to go into practice and help others. And so many, Monique was just phenomenal as well with neurology, because I love neurology. And it was just hearing it from a different person. I walked up to her and told her that if I could go back to school, I'd take her class. I'd want to be in her class again. Just amazing. And of course, the whole event is ended with Dr. Liam Schubel. He's a pretty big deal, the president of IFCO.
Yeah.
And it's just the amount of work that goes into putting on an event like that, like we can't even imagine. Because I know just putting on a seminar, how much it takes to do that for many less people. And they incorporated all the meals for everyone, so you didn't have to think about where you were going to eat. It was top notch, right? The best, greatest speaker. Everything was perfect about it, and the room and the ambiance and what happens on the breaks and outside in the evening, and the camaraderie too. That's probably my favorite part is the conversations and the relationships.
I honestly think it pushes the profession forward, and it gives all chiropractors a house to live in. And it gives people that connectivity, like you said, and fellowship. But it also gives people those breakouts to get to know each other that just know each other on social. So it allows people to get social off of social.
Yeah. And then, of course, Clothes for Chiro was there. And I think that the delivery of communication, patient communication, and how to sell what we do was one of the most amazing talks I've heard.
So this gives me the perfect segue then. So
Yes.
after the past 30 years of practice, 3 decades, what have you seen as some of the changes and some of the things that have been a bigger benefit?
So, a bigger benefit. The things that I've seen change, actually, what I was thinking of were that, and somebody touched on this, one of the speakers touched on this too. I think it was Bobby Dosher, actually, who said that when we used to see children in our practices, it would be, if they came in with some type of a symptom or complaint, maybe 3 adjustments and that complaint would be gone. Today, in our offices, it takes months and months and months and months, and if not years. And so parents, especially with children on the autism spectrum, they need to be willing to commit to long-term care. So one of the things I do in my office with those specific special cases is that I will not take the case on unless the parent does commit for that long-term care, because I know that it's not going to be worth it. I know it's going to take more time. And maybe young doctors don't realize that there's more complicated due to the toxins in our environment, whatever it is. These children are needing more care than they ever did in the past.
Yeah, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me because, we always want to do the right thing.
Yeah. And you can get frustrated if you don't. I think one of the things that many chiropractors do is that um, they don't, their care plans are not enough. They don't see their people enough so that they don't get the results that they desire. And, and so my message is that the care plans need to be bigger and more today than they did in the past.
That's one of the things I love about, my friends that run those membership style practices because they want to take care of people for the rest of their life. And
That's
I've
right.
learned that chiropractic care helps with, condition specific, but it's also baseline for long term health. And I think that
Correct.
sometimes the chiropractor gets misconstrued with a certain amount of visits as to that being chiropractic.
Yep. And we also talked about that this weekend with the difference between pathogenic care and salutogenic care, where David Fletcher talked about that. And salutogenesis is health bound, taking care of ourselves to keep ourselves healthy and continue to be as healthy as we possibly can. There's always limitations of matter, but pathogenic care is waiting for the disease to happen. So, you wait until you're sick and then you take a pill, something from the outside to get rid of it. We don't want to do that. We want to do things that help our bodies to be as healthy as they can throughout our lifetime.
Yeah, one of the points I made on a few of my Facebook Live interviews I did out there at Berkshire's 2018, out there at Sturbridge, Massachusetts with Garber and the crew, was people will sell the farm to keep somebody alive and to keep them healthy. They'll sell everything.
Yes.
Well, we need to keep that same idea is to sell the damn farm to keep us healthy long term and to invest in ourselves on a day-to-day basis instead of waiting until we get to that crisis care mode where we have something that we really have to manage that becomes entrenched inside of us that we're saying, hey, fix me with those two adjustments, please.
Yeah, that's so right. And I don't know. I don't get why people go to the dentist regularly, right? Get their teeth cleaned and checked. And in all these years, why haven't people caught on to like I need my to keep my nervous system healthy and well?
Well, that's where I was going with that first question. I'm glad you shared about, the children needing better quality of health and it takes longer and longer to take care of people. But I think one of the biggest things that's come into the chiropractic profession is how quickly we can do the x-ray, how quickly we can now bring the language into the point of getting people to understand that commitment to care is highly important. And I think that that's one of the things you were touching on earlier was how Dan Bay, Jen Rosenhart, and Sean Rundle have developed the Close for Chiro group, teaching chiropractors actually how to run business and how to be successful. And if you ask me, I would say, Linda, I think what they have done is one of the most, altering courses of action that has happened in the past 30 years. At least I've been in chiropractic 10 years, but I've heard great things about what that group is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, it was really the missing link in our practice. It helped us to really focus on every person coming in and what their values are, what they were looking for in the beginning. Like when they come in with a complaint, they're Dan Bay says that you don't want to throw chiropractic philosophy down their throats in the beginning. You want to meet them where they're at. And we call it to figure out what their life effect, what do they want? And, because I can't tell you how to live your life. Your values and goals are different than mine. And are everyone else's. So if we figure that out and then work with them with that. And then we're going to see them for a lifetime or a long period of time. And then as they start to heal and they feel the power of the adjustment and their bodies like raising the power of the light bulb increasing in their bodies, you can then talk chiropractic philosophy and lifestyle because it is a lifestyle.
Well, you fired me up there, and I think that every chiropractor should have in mind to keep that chiropractic practice member under care until they move or until they pass on.
Right. You know, I've adjusted some people on actually on their deathbed. I had a patient once who was an alcoholic, but I did not know it. I heard it from actually other practice members who worked with him, and he came in like couldn't stand up. And when he first came in, he said in his report of findings, he said to me, he said, "Will I be able to dance again?" And I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Great, because I never knew how to dance." But then in the end, he actually he passed with, he had liver failure from alcoholism, and he was in the hospital, and his wife called me and said that he wanted to get checked before he passed on. And I went to the hospital, and he was in a coma, and it was the most wonderful thing to bring him to peace, to exit this world.
Yeah, it's touching. And, I go back to where you went to school, which is life.
Yes.
And I know that you had a chance to learn from Dr. Sid. And one of the things that he always did is drop the keys. And
Yep.
let's touch on a little bit about it works whether you believe it or not. And a little bit about being under the leadership of Sid Williams when you had a chance to.
Yeah. So we're so fortunate to have, at the time, we didn't think we were so fortunate. Going to assembly every week with Sid was such a gift. And I also, as a student, went to DE every single time, so that was like 4 times a year as well, to get to speak to and be mentored by so many of the DE doctors at the time, and to meet Dr. Thompson, Clay Thompson, and some of the great technique people. But Dr. Sid, he taught us so many things. And one of the things when we were in school is a lot of couples were not getting along, like the husband back then, because there were probably 10% women in chiropractic. The guys, they would be in school all day. They'd come home. Their wives might be with their children or working somewhere else in the community, wanting to have conversation with their spouse. And it just didn't happen because we were in school 12 hours a day, came home, and just wanted to eat, study, and go to bed. So Dr. Sid taught us to, number one, have a gift of the week for our significant other. It didn't have to be anything big. It could be one simple flower. It could be doing a good deed for them, like doing the laundry or whatever. But and then date night for those couples with children. Find a babysitter and have a date night. And it saved, because a lot of people were getting divorced, and because of that. And I think it saved a lot of couples during that era. He was so strong in philosophy that even if I slept through assembly, it still went in. It still went in. And it took me a long time to understand what the dropping of the keys was, and all of the other stories that Sid provided us with. I'm forever grateful. And when I was on the stage I just said this to somebody the other day, when I was on the stage going up for my diploma, when I graduated, Dr. Sid whispered into my ear and he said, "If you ever need me, I'm just a phone call away." And he was such a giver and a server, and really one of the, like the biggest, best people in our profession. To, a lot of people say, who's going to be the next Sid? Who's going to be who's going to be the next person to rise? And I think we do have some young people in the profession now who I see rising to that same level of commitment and passion, and for chiropractic and taking it to the next level.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle Live. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Chiro Sushi, Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic bootcamp, Moveville University, Pure Chiro Notes, Dr. Alok Trivedi, the Black Diamond Club, Element Mattresses, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, Vita Chiropractic, the Universal Traction System, MedZone, Vantage Point Marketing, and Imaging Services. Let's hustle.
Yeah, you've touched on so many great things there about keeping the family unit strong. You touched on things about keeping the romance alive. You touched on things about keeping the legend going. And I think all those things are highly important to understand the lineage of where you came from, and know where we're going. And I think that that's highly valuable information for people out there that are listening.
And the whole concept of to give, to love, to serve. Sid used to say, you have a service hand and then, your money hand or your business hand, and not to be, not to confuse the two, but we need both. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people who did grow up in that era, we grew up in service. So we want to give, we want to serve, and we forget that, our service is worth something.
Yeah, I was talking to Keith Wassung a couple of weeks ago, and he goes, we got to keep the chiropractors away from the Peace Corps mentality of just give, love, and serve. They have to make a good living too.
That's correct. And there's nothing more valuable in my mind than a chiropractic adjustment. There's no pill that could do anything near as profound as an adjustment.
Yeah, and you've been probably knackered up and had an ache or a pain or something. You get adjusted, and you just know that it's not about removing the ache or pain from your body. It's about getting the alignment back to the spinal segment dysfunction, whatever we want to call it. But when you get the adjustment back to there, it's a no-brainer. The body's going to regulate itself and start to improve.
Correct. Yeah, and if you're subluxated, your brain and nervous system is working a lot harder to perform the same functions that are happening in our bodies right now without us, all those functions that go on that we don't think about. And that draws and drains energy, makes us tired, makes us irritable and unhappy. Then you see people fall into depression and downward spiral in health.
But when we were talking about earlier, I know the next thing we're going to touch on is the ICPA and kids in chiropractic, but we don't need evidence-based or we don't need medical necessity to know that when you put an adjustment onto a newborn or a 2-month-old or whatever, and some of their symptoms, like maybe colic, as we made a word for it, or something like, spitting up, as we know babies do, and their life are, reflux, whatever we want to call it. But when you start realizing that you made a profound impact because the mom comes back and says, that stopped. You're like, oh, maybe that's evidence-based enough. Maybe that is medical necessity enough to know that we can make an impact to the nervous system, allowing the baby's body that can't speak to start getting better. So there's no runaround as to did this work.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir here. Like I, for years, said, I don't need research because I got 30 years of it in my own practice. And if you look up like evidence-based, actually, my husband is very much into research and doing all of that. And he says that there's no better evidence-based than practice, like the results that you see in practice. And after 30 years in practice, I know that it works, and it works every time. So whether it's colic or reflux or ear infections or not sleeping, the effect, though, think about the effect on the whole entire family. You have an infant with reflux and colic. They go to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician says, here, take this Zantac or Prilosec. And the moms and dads are like, sure. They want to do anything because, number one, they're not sleeping all night, or I have one mom who was changing her baby like 30 times a day, 30 outfits a day. And that's most of your day. That between feeding and then not sleeping at night. If they're not sleeping at night, then both parents are sleep deprived and they're stressed out, and it affects the whole entire family. If there's older children, those older children, they're not getting the same attention because the parents have to pay attention to the child who's in distress and not adapting well. And then they they're also stressed out and in cortisol overload, right? Their cortisol levels are high because of the non-sleeping. So the whole family unit heals when you take the subluxations out of the infant's spine, when you correct them. And the parents look at their baby and they go, how did you do that, when they're lying so calmly on the table after they get checked? And after a few weeks, they're like, they can't believe it, you know? And that's how we get the parents under care, by the way, because they see that. And I was like, yeah, don't you want that for you? You need it too.
I was almost being humorous. I know it is kind of humorous, but I was at the event over the weekend with you, and I was like, "Screw the guys. The guys don't matter. We got to get to take care of the moms and the babies. If we can make an impact on the moms and the babies, then the guys are influenced then." And I was like, making an impact on the family unit as a whole is what chiropractic is all about. And I think it was either Sigafus, I always mess this one up. It's either Sigafus or Reggie Gold that would say, why would you come here and get adjusted and leave the rest of your family at home to stay sick?
Yeah, that's Sigafus. Yeah.
But that's the truth of the
Reggie
matter.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they probably have their own variation of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's common sense to us, but why would you go to get checked and adjusted if necessary and leave the rest of the family home to
die?
Watch TV? So I think you gave some really good information on what you feel about, that topic, but let's talk more about kids. Let's talk more about the ICPA and if people wanted to get involved with that, what that looks like and how you see the future of that.
Yeah. So the ICPA was originally started by Dr. Larry Webster, who is another doctor that he was actually my teacher when I was in chiropractic school. So another fortunate time. He passed on too early, and Dr. Jeannie Ohm, the ICPA, fell into her lap, and whether she wanted it or not, and she's done such an amazing job. She is a woman who I think probably we should put her on the highest pedestal in chiropractic because she has done so much in the chiropractic profession. And the ICPA has grown into a program to bring to doctors, to create that, to help them to learn how to adjust children, how to recognize signs and symptoms of different things going on and how to take care of them. They're learning about the immune system, and then putting it all together into practice. So it's 14 modules, and at the end of that, there's a certification process that you can do where it's the exam. Actually, each instructor has several questions that they put together, and it's about 40 written pages for that exam. And then some doctors go on to get their diplomate too. But it really, taking care of children is different. It's changing every day also. And the ICPA has come forward to help to bring chiropractors to be able to have the skills to do that.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to be able to have a brain trust, if you will, of experience.
Yeah.
And to have such a long-standing influencer to be able to say, hey, come home, learn from me, I'll give you the recipes.
Yep. They also do research like in something called PBRN, Practice-Based Research Network, where in our offices we follow protocol on whatever topic it may be. Maybe it might be Webster technique or taking care of children for wellness, and they collect the data from all the different offices. I think that's the best research, by the way. There's no better evidence than that, from collecting that data from the actual doctors, the patients, seeing the results. Mm-hmm. And collecting that from all various, so many different offices.
And it's not pain-based.
Correct.
And I think I always tell people that pain is the gateway into most people's lives for chiropractic. Most great chiropractors had some experience where they got into a situation where they got into trouble with pain, and they're like, who can help me? And they're
Yeah.
like, hey, I talked to my mom. My mom talked to this guy, and the guy down the street said, you should go see my chiropractor. And the next thing you know, we have the next generation of chiropractors.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of that, it was also mentioned this weekend that a lot of chiropractors don't get checked regularly, and that it's important that we do the same thing that we do for our practice members, that we take ourselves to the chiropractor every weekend or however often the chiropractor suggests that we have a doctor that we go see ourselves regularly.
Yeah, I think Michael Tokash, the sponsor of this episode with Imaging Services, just says, wow. And you can't get much more clear cut than that to say, wow. And, just being amazed by how much information there is, but we just have to know where to get it. And
Right.
I interviewed Timothy O'Shea 4 years ago now. He goes, it's not a problem of having the information, because we got information come from all sources. We have information overload. We just have to know where the trusted resource to get the information that makes sense to us and how to get it.
That's right.
Because he's like, we're in the information age. And he goes, you know what? We're in the too much information age.
Yeah. Sometimes we need to dial it down and keep it simple.
We do, because if not, we're just going to Google search and some other authority is going to tell us what to believe about our own profession.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was there and people are like, you have to keep your shows shorter. I can't do that with you. I'm sorry. Anybody that's out there, just quickly, I want to do a couple gratitude shout outs to people, for people that are involved with the communication between you and I today, because we can't do that without them. We can't do what we do and have such a fun time talking the tick without having the influence of the people that spend time with us. So I'm just going to say a quick shout out to the people that made comments to us today. And some of them were with us over the weekend. So we have Nathan Dominguez with 2020 Imaging and Imaging Services that has commented in. Yes, sir, we love Dr. Slak. And Andy Hawkins, who is a student at Northwestern, comments in, this is gold. Love to hear how both you and John Mark operate together while in practice. Thank you. Grateful to have met both of you. Nathan Dominguez.
Powerhouse.
Oh, yeah. The kid's talented. Andy pays attention and takes notes.
Yes.
Get after it. And then we have Travis Corcoran. He's over in the Netherlands. He's a good friend of mine. He says, active care is superior to passive care. One is a response to knowledge and understanding. The later is reactionary. And that goes back to what we were discussing earlier about, why wouldn't you want to get checked and adjusted necessary for the rest of your life instead of waiting until you get into a situation where you're cobbled up and you have to say, somebody saved my life now. And they're like 2 adjustments later, you're like, I'm not better. Well, honestly, when I worked in a clinic, I'd call it the wind-up process. I'd say sometimes you just wind up in bad health. And sometimes you wind up in good health. If you take care of yourself, you wind up in good health. If you wind up in bad health, it takes a long time for us to unwind you. It was the wind-up process. It was the wind-up process analogy. And I'm like, sometimes if you wind a spring up too long, what happens? It might break, it might pop. And that's what's happening now with you.
Yeah, you're in crisis mode.
Yeah, and now you want us to take all of our attention off of everything that makes sense to us on our daily practice, and you want us to give you all the attention that you feel like you deserve when you neglected yourself for so long. But now it's our job to pay attention to you and to give you all that loving care that you've neglected yourself about.
Right.
So, that's how I used to talk to people, and I still do. But we have Amanda Affleblatt that says, Dr. Slak is awesome. This is awesome from Molly Schwartz. Thank you for sharing such an important message. Amanda Affleblatt goes on to say, thank you, Dr. Jeannie Ohm and the ICPA team, Pediatric Chiropractic at its finest, greatest diplomat program on the planet. So there we have. We've said thank you to all the people that have responded into us. And if any of you are watching and you want to like chime in where you guys are coming in from, once again, Dr. Slak is in the greater Boston area. I'm in Grand Junction, which is a Grand Valley, the western slope of Colorado where no one lives. If you guys are coming in from somewhere watching, just type in where you guys are watching from. And if you guys are watching this on replay and you have questions for Dr. Slak or myself, please comment that, and we will definitely become social to you on social and get back to you. Any questions or ideas you might have, or send us a personal message. Dr. John Mark Slak says the Queen, so we got to make sure that the hubby is recognized as well. So at this point in the program, is there anything that I didn't ask you, Linda, that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think we covered pretty much everything. That was good. Yeah, is there anything else you want to hear?
I think that we covered a lot of topics. A couple people are like, you just go too long. And I'm like, well, if I have somebody of value that I can communicate with and people can learn, this is my forte. Yeah. I like to have the chiropractic conversation. I like to have people be able to talk about themselves, because you're only one story away. And when people listen to the story, I tell everyone that the person with the best story is the most valuable person in the room. I don't care what they drive. I don't care where they live. I don't care where they came from. If they can move someone else through the message of information, that is value. And really, that's what Dan Bay and the Close for Chiro group give to people, is value, because they can tell a better story and they can listen better. And one of the most impactful things I tell all of you is just to listen more and to pay attention to the people that you want to be of service to. Because if you pay attention and listen, that means that you have the best story eventually.
And make sure you get adjusted regularly.
Yeah,
and
so
get
adjusted. By the way, I got this shirt from Team Knowles, Danny Knowles, Rochelle Knowles gave this to me.
Nice.
And, absolutely love it. So with that being said, this episode is brought to you by Imaging Services. Michael Tokash and Nathan Dominguez support that brand. If you guys are interested in switching from chemical-based x-ray units to digital-based speed of a light x-ray units, reach out to them and let them be your trusted provider of imaging services.
Best service in the world, by the way.
There you have it. Coming from the Queen, John Mark Slak says. So thank you, Linda, for spending some time with me today.
Oh, you're
absolutely
welcome.
Love and appreciate
for all you do too.
So much. To me, it's fun, because I have learned how to build the road and I stay in the lane now. So let's look. We had two more. Michael Tokash says, go Villanova, and Amanda Affleblad says, thank you, Dr. Slak and Jim, with hearts in her eyes. So we have a lot of love. And Michael Tokash once again says, nice, thank you. So Dr. Linda, have a great Monday, and I can't wait till we connect again next. And if you guys want to check out her full episode, go over to chirohustle.com and listen to episode number 41, and she is our featured episode today. And have a great rest of your day.
You too.
All right. We'll
have
see
a good
you.
one.
Right.
Thank you for listening to Chiro Hustle Live. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.